Welcome, Wind Chasers. Welcome to another episode of Chasing the Wind. I'm Pastor Mark. Let me tell you how the wind was blowing the other day. There is a young priest that I listen to his homily sometimes. He said, "Whoa, Pastor Mark, what are you doing listening to a Catholic priest homily?" Well, because I'll tell you something, these things are good. And he went to my alma mater, so, then he went on to be a priest. He was supposed to be an accountant, but anyway, Mark Bernard is his name. He is a priest, church in Illinois. And I have spoken to him briefly on the phone, but I love his messages. They're good, solid messages. And this one particularly really was powerful to me. And is speaking to me kind of where I'm at right now. And I hit these places sometimes myself quite frequently. And maybe this will speak to you a little bit today. So one of these days I'm going to preach on this because this was good stuff. Not his homily, I'll preach my own, but you know what I mean. I was very inspired by it. So we're in the season of Lent, and of course that's preparing us for Jesus' death and resurrection for Holy Week. And we can only imagine, we give old Peter a hard time, but Peter is with Jesus, and we see in John 18 that Jesus gets arrested. He's taken to the high priest, and Peter gives his first denial of Jesus. And that's in verse 15. Simon Peter, another disciple, were following Jesus because the disciples was known to the high priest. He went with Jesus into the high priest's courtyard, but Peter had to wait outside at the door. The other disciple, who was known as to the high priest, came back, spoke to the girl on duty there, and brought Peter in. You are not one of his disciples, are you? The girl at the door asked. He replied, I'm not. It was cold, and the servants and officials stood around a fire. It's my understanding this is a charcoal fire, okay? That they had made, doesn't matter really what kind of fire it is, it's fire. And they had made to keep warm. Peter also was standing with them, warming himself. You go over to his second and third denials. In verse 25, Simon Peter stood warming himself, assuming he's still by the fire. He was asked, you are not one of his disciples, are you? He denied it, saying, I am not. Well, the high priest's servants and relative of the man whose ear Peter had cut off challenged him, didn't I see with him at the olive grove? Again, Peter denied it, and at that moment a rooster began to crow. Now I want you to jump over, if you're following me, into John chapter 21. Peter, after this thing, watching Jesus get crucified, the resurrection has not yet happened. It has happened. Peter's still just trying to figure all this out. And you know what? People today are still trying to man, I can't get my mind around this. This is just wow. But Peter's pretty broken at this. He sees what's going on. He sees the empty tomb, and he's trying to make sense of it. And he does what anybody would do. They go back to what they know, what's comfortable, what's safe. And he goes back to fish. I doubt he was a fly fisherman, although in River runs through it. The main character's dad, who is a pastor, says he was a fisherman. And he was. Simon was a fisherman, but not a fly fisherman, most probably. And so Peter goes fishing, and they don't catch anything. And so Jesus appears to them. He says, hey, throw your nets on the other side. They're out of it. Peter recognizes that it's Jesus on the shore. And he jumps out of the boat, and he swims to shore. And he gets up there, and he gets on the shore, and he sees a fire going. And Jesus is making breakfast. Tells you that Jesus was a Swede, because it is probably a herring breakfast. There's fish on the fire. You Swedes will get that, okay? I don't eat fish for breakfast. I've heard of herring breakfast, so that the Swedes, we're in a kind of heavy Swedish area here, so they have herring breakfast. I haven't been brave enough to try it. I digress. And Peter comes and he sees the fire. And he sees Jesus. Maybe Peter's coming. I'm just imagining this here, so just give me a little latitude here. Peter is coming up to it, and Jesus may be on the other side of the fire, and he can see Jesus through the glow of the flames. And can you imagine Peter just stopping in his tracks? If you watch The Chosen, you can imagine Peter either running through the fire, or he's like, oh boy, It'd be interesting how maybe they show that in The Chosen if they do that. Many of us would say, I'm going back to the boat because I know exactly what's going on here. He's probably triggered in some ways. I'm not talking, I mean, it's a trigger. He sees the fire. He was standing at the fire just a few chapters before this, and he denied Jesus. So you can imagine when Peter sees the fire, he is going back a few chapters. He didn't have the chapters we do. A few hours, a few days. He's going back. He's been ruminating on this all along. It is almost as though Jesus says, I know what happened at the fire. A friend of mine, Roy Rotz, Dr. Roy Rotz, told me one time, he was a psychology professor at Mid-American Nazarene University. He said, Mark, Jesus will often take us back to the place of our deepest wounding to bring the deepest healing. It is Lent, most probably when this is going to be coming out. And so we're being confronted with our sin and our brokenness in this season. And Jesus doesn't waste this opportunity, because the next thing would be, the next subheading is Jesus reinstates Peter. You could say Jesus heals Peter. You could say Jesus restores Peter. But sometimes, and even in this season of Lent, God may bring us back to our place of deepest wounding to bring the deepest healing. He may bring us back to our fires, our as Father Mark Bernard called it, our charcoal fires. Peter knew instantly. He's like, wait a minute, Jesus wasn't there. Why the fire? And I'm guessing Peter's putting it together. He didn't run though. He didn't go back. He didn't go back like the woman at the well, back to the city and say, hey, this guy told me everything I knew. Peter's kind of undone. And he runs toward the fire. He doesn't run away from healing. He doesn't run away from restoration. He doesn't run away from Jesus. He runs to him. What will you do when you are standing at your charcoal fire? I mean that metaphorically. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it probably won't happen once, to be honest with you. You may be realizing, wow, I am standing at my charcoal fire right now. And you will encounter Jesus there if you will seek him. And not run back to the boat, to that which you're comfortable with, but to lean into it, engage Jesus and say, what do you want to do here? Again, I say we cannot change or heal what we don't acknowledge. Peter didn't need Jesus to really acknowledge it, but Jesus would go on with him and talk to him about this process of, do you love me? Do you love me? Because he denied him. You been denied? You ever had anybody deny you, turn their back on you? Jesus says, you're still alive, so that doesn't define you. There's a movie, God always speaks to me, and doesn't always, a lot of times he speaks to me through movies. One of my favorite movies is The Emperor's Club, and there's a line in there. I've maybe used it in these last few years, but I'll use it again because it's just a good line. The worth of a life is not determined by a single failure nor a solitary success. That's a quote from the main character, Mr. Hundert. The worth of a life is not determined by a single failure nor a solitary success. The world may define your life by that, but Jesus doesn't do that. We see that with this band of renegades, rebels, and rogues that Jesus has called to be his followers, his disciples, his apostles. This meeting Jesus at our places of deepest wounding can be scary. Healing can be scary. Exposure. I did my doctoral work on toxic shame. And a direct quote from my dissertation, the curse is the cure for toxic shame. And what is the curse? Exposure. I don't want anybody to see what was done to me, what I have done, how bad of a person I feel like I am. But that's the cure for toxic shame, is exposure. Because once it's out there, now you can deal with it. Now you can deal with it. I recently had some work done on my truck. It's got 230,000 miles on it. Salute! It's about 18 years old, and I love that old truck. It still runs good. I took it in for an oil change, and they ended up having to put rotors and brake pads on the front. And I called them and said, how are we doing on it? Is it ready to pick up? He goes, no, we're trying to find fuel tank straps. Yours are rotted, and your fuel tank is dropped about 3 or 4 inches. That's not a good thing if your fuel tank drops and kind of lands on the ground, and you got to call hazmat if it gets through, and all that good stuff. I had no clue it was going on, but you know what? I'm glad that they found it. I'm glad they didn't say, he doesn't need to know this, we'll just let go. It wasn't a money maker for them. The straps weren't that expensive. It's not like they, paid off the mortgage or anything with it. But I'm grateful that which I did not see was exposed so that it could be fixed. And I don't like using the word fixed when it comes to broken people. I don't think Jesus is in the process of fixing us. He heals us. He strengthens us. He helps us overcome. He restores us. But know this, wind chasers, and God is speaking to me through this, and He has taken me to my charcoal fire, and He still does sometimes, whatever that stands as a metaphor for you. So I'm going to encourage you, wind chasers, again, to not run from it, but to run to it, knowing that at that place, Jesus will bring healing and salvation and restoration. I'm going to leave it right there, wind chasers, because there's a lot for you to ponder and to pray about. I want you to know something. I don't know too many of you. I know some of you who watch this show and are kind enough to like it and share it, and I appreciate that, and getting the word out. But I do love you, and so does the Lord. And meeting you at that charcoal fire is not to condemn you, but it's to heal you, make you whole. So don't be afraid of it. Lean into it. And lean into Jesus. Until next time, I'm Pastor Mark. Keep chasing the wind, because the wind is chasing you.